Okay.
Class.
Okay.
All right, everyone. So welcome back, Ariel. And so we're holding on page Kuf. No, not back. On page Kuf Yabad Aleph. Let's bring up the text. For some reason, this bottom of the page really is missing kind of a few lines. So we're going to I'm going to switch over at the end to another version of the Steinsaltz that's actually running on Chabad.org. It doesn't have all the notes, but at least it has the original text. Okay, so we're holding in the middle of the Gemara on Bilam. Why are we talking about Bilam? Because Bilam, Rasha, is the one of the people that do not have a portion in the world to come. So the Gemara continues about Bilam. The Gemara says like this: Vayechu Ziknei Moya v'Ziknei Midian. We're talking about the when Balak sends the king of Moab sends his emissaries to go and try to convince Bilham to curse the Jewish people. So it says Vayechu Ziknei Moab v'Ziknei Midian. The elders of Moab and the elders of Midian come together to try to convince Bilam to curse the Jewish people. As the Jewish people are entering Eretz Yisrael, so they should not be successful in their invasion of Eretz Yisrael. So it says Tana Midian Umayev lahem shalom mi'olam. We know that Midian and Moab, they were neighbors on the so it would be southern east side of Eretz Yisrael. They were enemies. How do we know? It's because he's going to bring a proof. There's a pasuk that supports that they didn't get along, Rashi quotes. So why did they make peace together to try to hire Bilam to curse the Jewish people? So the Gemara says, Mashal l'shnei chalavim. You have two dogs. Shahayu be'eder that were together in the yard, so to say. So or with the flock. And they didn't get along, they were enemies. So when the wolf comes to attack the flock, so one of the sheepdogs realizes that his enemy is being attacked. Amar Echad, the other one said, if we don't join forces together to fend off the wolf, Hayim Hairigai said, today he'll kill one dog if I leave my enemy alone. The next day the wolf will come and kill me because he's coming to attack the flock. So although we don't get along, the two dogs don't get along, it's better to join forces to fight against the wolf. So too is why Moab and Midian, although they were enemies. So Halchu Shneihem v'Hargo Za'ev. Both of them went and killed the two dogs together, went and killed the wolf. So too over here, Moab and Midian, although they were enemies, they try to join forces to get Bilam to curse the Jewish people. And Avram Rapapa, this is what Rapapa says, Hanu Damar Inshi. This is a famous concept in the Gemara. Hanu Damar Inshi means this is something that is common that the people would say that Karkushta Vishunra Avadu Hilula Mitarba Devishkada. It says that the weasel, so a Karkushta, hey Bruce, on page 105a. So a karkushta means a weasel and a cat made a wedding. Hilul is a wedding from the fat of the god. The Devish god, that means the luckless, the one who has no luck. So although evidently the weasel and the cat don't get along, but they join forces when it suits them. So too, Midian and Moab joined forces because it suited them. So we're talking about again Bilham and the Moab and Midian hiring Bilam to curse the Jewish people, so they were enemies. So how do we know they're enemies? So Rashi says, we have the famous verse that says that Midian fought against Moab. Makkah means it means it's an expression of war. So they had a war between each other. So if they had a war, why would they join forces for Bilam? Because it's in their joint interest. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. All right, Tzuhuvim koyasin ka'adim shekayis b'fnei fanab Tzuhuvim. Why is it called Tzuhuvim? Tzuhuvim means their face color changes out of hate. So they hated or anger. They had anger for each other. The two dogs had anger for each other, which is a mashal, an idea based on Moav and Midian. Karkushta is a chulda. Chulda is a weasel. Karkushta v'shunra ein lem shalom olam. Rashi says, obviously, in the animal kingdom, the weasel and the cat don't get along. Baisha Gada, what's Baisha Gada mean is Mazl Ras, someone who has no luck. So the weasel and the cat will join forces when it suits them. So the point is basically it's a simple idea that that Moab and Midian made peace just for the sake of their own self-interest. So like the two dogs, they need to protect each other in order to protect themselves. A similar term, the Reb Steinzal says, karkushta, is found in Syriac language. Perhaps it's related to the Greek, whose meaning include a small animal, perhaps these a type of mouse. Okay, a karkushta is from a weasel, he says. All right, either way. So vayeshvu sari moyev im Bilam. So it says that the sarim means the princes of Moab were they returned with Bilam. So they stayed with Bilam. They stayed with Bilam. So the question is, we just said that Balak or the countries of Moab and Midian together sent emissaries to Bilam, and then it says that only the princes of Moab stayed with Bilam. So what happened to the princes of Midian? So it says, Kivin the Amrlu. So when Bilam told them, Linu poi halayla vashivoisi eschem davar. So what does Bilam say to the people of Moab, to the princes of Moab and Midian? Stay the night, and I'll tell you I'll return davar, I'll return something, I'll speak to God, and God will tell me if I could curse or not. So when they heard that he couldn't curse on his own, Amru, the princes of Midian said, Klum yesh av shesainis b'noi. So this is the complexity of anti-Semitism, right? I mean, it's not just anti-Semitism. You have to remember the Jewish people were never coming to take Moab and Midian. Torah clearly says, don't touch Moab. Don't bother them. Moab was given to Lot. Midian was Midian. Midian and Moab were never part of Eretz Yisrael. Were never part of the lands that were promised at that point, at least to the Jewish people. So they had no real, in the worst case scenario, they could have let the Jews come through. And the Jewish people would have gone to Eretz Yisrael. It has nothing to do with them. But they hated the Jewish people. So here they say they hate the Jewish people. They're trying to solicit and to hire Bilam to curse the Jewish people. So Bilam cannot go in, so the Jewish people can't go into Eretz Yisrael, or Eretz Canaan as was known at the time. So when he says, I have to wait the night, they say, Klum yeshav shesainis b'nai. Is there a father who hates his son? So Midian themselves admit that the Jewish people are like a son to a father to God. Nevertheless, that doesn't stop them from wanting to disrupt God's plans for the Jewish people. Right, that's the hypocrisy that we see all the time. Mamash ad hayom. It says, "Kulum yesh av shesainis b'nai." Is there a father that hates his son? Shu saver sheyomer leHakadosh Baruch Hu. Does Bilam really think that God is going to tell him, "Kalkal beneath, cursed by its children"? The Gomer Bilam linu payalayla. When Bilam says, "Wait the night," so they realize there's no chance. God's never going to. If it's dependent on God, God is never going to allow Bilam to curse the Jewish people. So I'm gonna refrain from giving more comment on that. So Amar Rab Nachman says. Now this is anyone who reads the story of Bilam in the Torah, it seems like a pretty complicated story because Bilam says, wait the night. God says no. And then God says yes. So how did that work? So Amar Rab Nachman, he doesn't say yes, go curse them. He says you could go, but you have to only listen to me. But first he says don't go with them. So how did God change his mind? So this Reb Nachman says, Amar Reb Nachman teaches, chutzpah, when a person has chutzpah, we all know what chutzpah is. Afilu klap ishmai mahani, chutzpah even for heaven works. If a person has chutzpah, Bilam had chutzpah, he demanded to be let to go curse the Jewish people, at least to go with the princes of Bilam and the princes of Moab and Midian. So Mikarach Siv, because initially God tells him, don't go with the people of Midian and Moab. He says, okay, you could go with them, on condition you don't say anything that you shouldn't say. So we see that chutzpah, he had chutzpah, he demanded to go, and God kind of yielded to his chutzpah. So this is a famous expression, chutzpah, afilu klap ishmai mahani. You can have chutzpah, so to say, against God. Reb Sheshes says, chutzpah machus b'lei tagahi. What is chutzpah? Chutzpah is like a crown, is like a monarchy without a crown. What does it mean, a monarchy without a crown? So he brings a support of the pasuk that says when King David, anyone who follows the life of David HaMelech, King David, the Yertzat was just recently in Shavuos, that David HaMelech, he started off kind of with a chevra, with his cousins, with his Bnei Tzruya. He had Yoav ben Tzruya, which is his cousin or his nephew. So Tzruya was his brother, sister. So they were family. And it says that David once said, kind of speaking out about what it's like to be amongst your family, your own kind, to be a king, to try to be king. It says, "Vaynoichi hayoim rach u'moshuch melech." David said about himself, and I am this day weak. Rach is weak, though I'm anointed king. V'anoshim eila, these people, meaning Bnei Tzruya, his nephews, kashim imenu, they're harder than me. So meaning to say that they had like all the chutzpah. Yoav and his brothers, so to say, had a chutzpah of to be almost like a king. The only thing they were lacking was a crown. David felt the only thing he had over these people was his crown. But so we see chutzpah is like a monarch without a crown. Again, in general, we see how people behave when they're chutzpahdik, right? When they have chutzpah, audacity. So they think they're kings, right? So David HaMelech said, "My cousins, my nephews," and I keep on saying cousins and nephews. I think there's a different opinion. If Yoav was a cousin or a nephew, I mean, according to most opinions, Tzruya was David's sister. So Yoav ben Tzruya, obviously around the same age group, plus minus. So he says, "Chutzpah filu klap shmaya mahani." Rashi says the chutzpah even helps for heaven. The hani le masha chotzav shehichotzif. Panav Laimelish Luche Balak Linu Pai Shamalek Hadish Baruch Betchil Lay Selech Vadar Melech. That he had a chutzpah. He told him, stay, let's see if I could force the hand of God. And then first God says, don't go, and then he said he could go. Again, on condition he listens. Machusa Balitaga, David Melch said that chutzpah is like a crown with a monarch without a crown. Tag is a crown. Chutzpah makes a person feel Srara from the word sar. I'm a master. I'm a king. The only thing I'm lacking is my crown. Yeah, that's a person say, when you look around at a person sometime who's chutzpahdik, you say, where do you come off being so chutzpahdik? Literally, the person feels he or she's only lacking a crown. David says, I'm weak, but I'm anointed, and these people are kashim, harder than me. David felt the only thing he had over the sons of Tzruya, his nephews, was his crown, that he was anointed by Shmuel, by Samuel. Okay, so this is a kind of we're learning today a bit of a lighter Gemara. I'm going to try to add as much as the Mefarshim as we can in the story of Bilam. So the Gemara continues. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan teaches. We're going to learn that that we see that there's a similar mindset to good and evil. So we know Bilam represents evil. So it says, Bilam chigar b'ragli achasay. Bilam limped with one leg. Shenemar vayelech shefi. It says, I'm walking, shefi is limping. Shimshon, the Gibor, Shimshon, the savior, the judge of the Jewish people, he saved the Jewish people from the Philistines. Vishtei raglav, he was limping on 2 feet. Shenemar, it says about him, meaning when Yaakov blesses the tribe of Dan, and the tribe of Dan's blessing from Yaakov is kind of primarily around the story of Shimshon. Shimshon is from the tribe of Dan. It says Shvifon Ali Arach. So it's not Shefi is singular, but Shvifon is plural. He was double limping, meaning both legs. That bites the horse's heels. Bilam, so he was Bilam. We're going to see that what the connection is. What's the connection between Shimshon and Bilam? Shimshon is, okay, fine. Shimshon is limping in 2 legs, and Bilam is limping in 1 leg. Why are we comparing the two? So the idea is that just as horrible as Bilam was aggressive, although he was limping, what's the idea? Why do we say he was limping? That although he was limping, a person who's limping wouldn't be as mobile, wouldn't be running. He was so hateful for the Jewish people that although he was limping, he ran to go try to curse the Jewish people. On the contrary, Shimshon, although he was limping in 2 legs, and maybe you'd think he would take it easy, he was aggressively protecting the Jewish people. So they both had this out of character, means they pushed themselves, one for evil and one for good. So Bilam also, not only was he limping, he also was Summa ba'achs mein avaya. Rebecca, Bilam was blind in one eye. How do we know he's blind in one eye? So it says, because he says, Shusum ha'ayin, whose eye is open. Eye is singular. So if his one eye was open, his other eye was closed. So he was blind in one eye, and he was limping in the one leg, but that didn't stop him from running. And not only running, we see that he ran and he himself went and took his donkey and he ran to go try to curse the Jewish people. So Rashi says Shefi he brings down from the Gemara Chulin the laws of kashrus. That's buka the atma the shaf beduchte is talking about a dislocated limb or dislocated hip. So he had like a dislocated hip in the laws of kashrus. One of the things of treifa is if there's a dislocation, possibly again treifa means an animal can't live out the year. So if there's a dislocation or there's lacking something in the yerach is a problem. Shrifon mash moshtaim by Shimshon, he had two legs that he was limping. Notwithstanding that he was limping in two legs, he still pushed himself to protect the Jewish people. Okay, Bilam was blind in one eye. How do we know? Because it's the pasuk says Shasum ayin, Shasum pasuach. His eye was opened. Kamay shetumay nikar. Klamer ene achas betucha. One eye was open. Miklad acher stuma. If only one eye is open, obviously the other one's closed. V'hachinam mitargimon the shaper chazi as istim fashi shasum kamay sasum vlav milsi. So one used the word sasum means closed one eye. That's a samach. But here it says shasum is the open eye. But that means the other one was closed. Okay, so in here he quotes the Marsha. Rabbi Steinsaltz quotes the Marsha of the connection between the Shimshon and Bilam. It says in both cases, the point is, talking about the limping of the limp of Bilam and the two legs that were so to say limping by Shimshon. In both cases, the point is to describe the essence of each person. Bilam was disabled; he was limping, and nevertheless exerted himself to embark on a long journey to endure hardship, motivated by his hatred for the Jewish people. Samson, although he was disabled, is nevertheless hierarchically he delivered the Jewish people from their enemies, means the Philistines. Okay, here is where we're going to have to switch over to the Chabad.org. We're missing a few pages here, a good few lines. Usually I would just read it, but it's more than a few lines. So I'll just bring it down to the other version if it pops up fast enough. Okay. Okay, so where do we finish off? He's Shasuyayim. So he was glimming on one eye. I just want to bring down, so here he brings down the Marsha as well, that the Marsha says the difference between Shimshon and Bilam, like Rabbi Steinsaltz says. Okay. Well done. Just a second. Okay. Okay, now it says here, we learned, I don't remember where the Shuki's not here today, he's traveling. But we learned earlier about, I forget where in Sanhedrin earlier about this idea, that he was a magician. It says about Bilam, Kaisim ba'masei haya. He was a magician with his penis. How do we know that? Means, i.e., the Mefarshim say means through masturbation. How do we know that? It says Neiful vigoli einayim. It says about in the conversation of Bilam, it says fallen yet with open eyes. Nafal vigoli einayim. And it says by Esther. Everyone knows the story of Esther. At the end of the story of Esther, so she points out Haman as being the aggressor against the Jewish people, against her people. And it says Achashverosh gets so upset and he walks out to the garden, he comes back, and Haman has fallen on Esther on her bed, right? In those days, their bed was like their, so to say, their dining chair. So it says, V'hine Haman noifel alamita, that Haman is on Esther's reclining chair. So that is a sign of sexual aggression. So that's why how do we know that? Because what did Achashverosh say when he saw Haman on Esther's recliner? He says Agam nichbay, right? He accused Haman of trying to molest Esther or however he understood the situation that led to his being hung, right? So we see, so just like by Haman it says Neufel. and it says Neifel v'Gali Einayim. So here we see that they're both connected with some sort of sexual indication, and therefore that's how he kind of did his magic or his kaisim. He was a magician. That's how he had his energy. Itmar again. So what's the point of it? The point is that he took it from the chambers from the heichalis of Tuma. So there's ways to get to that one takes from the chambers of Tuma. That's how Bilam was able to take from Tuma, from purity, the energies that he had to curse, to have magic, to have etc. Itmar Mazrutra says, Kaisim ba Marbre de Ravina Amar, Shabale Sane. So one says, again, Marbar Abzutra says that he was a kaisim, he was a magician with his penis, meaning masturbation. That's how he got strength. The other one, Marbre de Ravina, another person says, his name is Marbre, the son of Ravina, he says that he had bestiality, he had relations with his donkey. The one who says that he did it with his penis, that's what we said before, comparing to Haman to the story of Esther. How do we know that he had bestiality with his donkey? Here it says Kara Shachav, and Ichsiv Hassam, it says by the story of Yael and Yael and Sisera, right? Yael, we all know the story in the Judges. Sisera was the king, and Yael calls him into her tent, and when Barak and Devorah are chasing him, she puts him in her tent and she kills him. But what happens in those little few minutes or hours that Sisera is hiding in Yael's tent? The Gemara understands that Sisera had relations with Yael. So it says Ben Ragleha. She also, and they use the word shachev, Ben Ragleha. So from there we see a comparison, shachev, that he slept with his donkey. And going back to the original text because we don't have the comments over here. Let's just go up and turn this page. And here it says Kar Nafal Shachav, that Sisroi, Kara Nafal Shachav, that he fell, he sunk and he fell and he lay. So Rashi says Kar Nafal Makriya Dahasim the Isbay Nefila Beila. Just like by Sisroi, it says the Gemara says that he slept with her 7 times. So too, it says the word Kara, Afkriya Dahach, even the Karva Shachav. The Kara that it says by Bilam, the Chsiv Neifel Baaliyah, he Shava al Baimtai, means he slept with he had bestiality, he slept with his donkey. I just want to say that not all the Mefarshim agree with Rashi in the Girsa here. A lot of them say that the Girsa, because the problem with this comparison of Shachav is that that's talking about his praise of the Jewish people, that the Jewish people rest like a lion. It has nothing to do with that Bilam had bestiality. So others say that again, that there's a different version of the pasuk. The Gra brings down that it's supposed to be also from Neifel, that Neifel. So the different girsas, but the conclusion is basically that we learn from Yael that Yael also had relations with Sisera in order to kill him. Later, we're going to learn that Yael. We learned later that Yael was on level of Rivka and Sarah Rivka. Rachel and Leah. So Nashim, she was like on the level of the Nashim of the woman of our foremothers. So the question is, how do we understand that with the fact that she slept with Sisera? Some say it was that she did not sleep with Sisera based on that. Others say that from this we learn that the koach of a person who does an avera, for someone who does an avera, they're ready to sin for the sake of saving the Jewish people. She sinned with Sisera, even though it was a sin because she protected the Jewish people. Like that, she was able to kill him. And that ended the story with Sisera. That was the whole idea of Devorah and Barak, etc. Okay, that's what I think. Who says that? Is I think the Mashal says. It says Aviyesh Shekasfu that the Beersheba, the Hani Damir Hasan Lay Nagaba, he didn't touch her and Shleoi Davel Anasa. Some opinions say that he didn't touch her. Others say that he didn't touch her means she didn't take any pleasure out of it. But she didn't. She did it. She did it l'shem shemayim. That's a complicated conversation about l'shem shemayim, sinning l'shem shemayim. But according to most opinions, either she didn't touch him or she slept with him, but she slept with him, she didn't take any pleasure. She did it for the sake of heaven to save the Jewish people. Okay, we're going back to Bilam. The Gemara says, V'yedei das elyon. Bilam says about himself, again, if you want to know, how do we know about Bilam? Bilam tells us about Bilam. The Torah doesn't tell us really about Bilam. Bilam, this tells us his greatness. So one of the things he says about himself is V'yedei das Elyon. He knows the knowledge of Hashem. He's praising himself. He knows things. So the Gemara says, what do you mean he knows the knowledge of Hashem? Hashta das behemta le'avayada, das Elyon havayada. He doesn't even know how to answer his donkey. He doesn't even know what his donkey's thinking. He knows what God's thinking. How's it possible he knows what God's thinking? My daita behemta, what does it mean he doesn't know the knowledge of his animal? The Amrlay, because what happened was basically what we see about the story of, if you want to analyze a bit from the Chumash, the story of Bilam and Balak. Balak is the king. It says Balak in certain ways was much greater than Bilam. Bilam had the power to curse. Balak was a bigger magician. He knew more. He just didn't have he needed Bilam to lay the curse. That's what Bilam had. But even Balak hated Bilam. You see, he talks down to him. In the whole story, you see Bilam has a tremendous insecurity, inferiority complex with Balak. Balak is the king. What does he tell God? Look how they respect me. Look how much gold they give me. It was all about his ego, his insecurities, and they didn't like him. So they didn't like him. Not only did they not like him, the kings didn't like him, but the ministers didn't like him. No one liked Bilam. He was a despicable being. And he was insecure about it. That's this whole conversation. You have to give me more money. I deserve more. And when they really make fun of him, that's when he curses them. At the end, he curses Moab. He tells them, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen with the Jewish people, how they're going to conquer the world. So here he says, V'dei das Elyon, he doesn't know what his animal's thinking. So how does he know what God's thinking? What does he mean doesn't know his animal's thinking? So the Gomer lay, so the ministers were belittling Bilam as they're asking him for a service, right? My time later, why do you ride a donkey? Why don't you ride a horse? So he doesn't answer. What does he say? He doesn't say if that's true or not. He says, Shadilu beritiva. He goes, I left him to pasture. You come to me suddenly. I didn't know we had an appointment there. We have an urgent matter. So my horses are out to pasture. So therefore I'm taking my donkey, so to say, now. So Rashi says, Das behemta le'aviyada, my boy la dure. He didn't know what to answer his donkey. In the Farish, as we're going to explain, sorry, Balak, my time to say, because he didn't know. He thought he didn't. The donkey we're going to see outsmarts him. So when they asked him why doesn't he ride a horse, and he says because beritfa ba'achu loyrais hasavim lachim, they went out to the pasture to have moist grass so they could eat well. So and you called me suddenly. Otherwise, of course, I ride a horse, right? Why do you drive such a car? I have a beer. My nice car's in the shop. You came suddenly. I would drive a Lamborghini. I drive a nice Mercedes. So this is my extra car, my old car. So he had a major insecurity. That's a whole underlining of the story. There is that a lot of the motivation, right? He was limping in one leg. Well, a lot of the motivation was his stature amongst the nations. His stature, he was belittled. He was. I mean, if according to the opinion of how he behaved, both opinions how he behaved, bestiality, masturbation, he was a low person. So they didn't like him. They didn't want to be associated with him, but they needed him, and that gave him insecurity. So the the donkey says, no. Why are you saying that the horses are out to pasture? I'm your donkey. All the time. I'm not just. This is not the extra car. I'm how you traveled. I'm your car. I'm your vehicle. So he says, I don't use you for travel. I only use you l'ti'ina ba'alma, only to carry things. You're just you're the extra van to carry things. Asher Rachavta says, no, don't lie. You didn't just use me to carry things. You ride me. Sakrei ba'alma. This only happens once in a while. She says, no. She says, you've always been riding me. So what do we see? That he doesn't even know how his donkey is always ahead of him. I never ride you. I just carry my packages on you. She says, no, Amrullah. She says, you ride. Whenever my horse is not ready, then I'll ride you. So she says, no, you always been riding me. So how could he know what God wants if he can't even have a conversation properly with his donkey? And this is when she adds, not only do you ride me at night, but you sleep with me you ride me by day, you sleep with me at night. How do we know? It says over here, Haskin hiskanti, so over here it says the word Haskin hiskanti, and which means kind of to be warmed up, which is an indication of relationship. And it says when Avishag was so to say brought to the King David when he was cold. It says "Usihilai Seichenes" also means to be warm. Again, we've learned. I remember if you will remember, Avi was there for sure. We learned in before COVID that David HaMelech did not have relations with Avishag, but initially it seems like when the servants brought Avishag was the young woman that was brought to David right before his passing. So that's in the story of the Haftorah of Chayei when the conversation with Bathsheba and Natan Hanavi. That Avishag was there then. So the idea was she should warm the king. He was cold. So the Gemara says, "Ma'as ishish she'ata boili." You have bestiality with me. Seichenes is mechamemes. You keep me warm. So now the Gemara goes back to the question: Elamai v'yedei das elim. What does it mean? He knows what God wants. He doesn't even know what his donkey wants. How can he know what God wants? What he knows is he doesn't know what God's thinking, but he knows the moments God is angry. And in order to get a curse, he needs to find the moments God would be angry at the Jewish people. And that's what his specialty was. He says, I know when God's angry. And this is what Micha says in the Haftorah that we read in the story of Bilam and Balak. Ami Zacharna, remember please my people. Ma Yoitz Balak ben Melech Moav. What was the Yoitz? What was the suggestion, or so to say? The Eitzav, that Balak, the king of Moab, Bilam ben Ba'ar, what did Bilam answer him? Minashitim ad Gilgal. What's Shitim ad Gilgal? So it says Shittim is where the Jewish people sinned later in the Shittim by the Paor, by the daughters of Midian. Until the Gilgal, Rashi calls it the Cheta Gilgal. So until then, God was angry. Leman das sitkis Hashem, you should know God's righteousness. My leman das sitkis Hashem. What does it mean, God's righteousness? This is all Micha saying. God tells the Jewish people, do not commit tzedakis asisi machem. Know how righteous I was with you. When Bilam was trying to get me angry, when he was trying to be mechaven the time, to set the time of God's anger between when the Jewish people sinned at the Pa'or. The Pa'or was that final sin before the Jewish people entered the land that really stuck with the Jewish people. I mean, after everything, 40 years in the desert, the story with the head of the tribe of Shimon. I mean, this wasn't a nice moment for the Jewish people, and that was the moment that Bilam felt he could curse the Jewish people. God would be angry. So God said, "I did a tzedakah, I did a charity. I wasn't angry." If I wasn't angry all those days, the enemies of the Jewish people, which is a nice way of saying the Jewish people, there would be no remains of the Jewish people because I would have cursed the Jewish people. So Rashi says, "Minashitim v'ad Gilgal, mishachatu b'shittim," from when they sinned at Shittim, which is again the daughters of Midian. I'm sorry, I try to check the Chet of Gilgal. If I'm not mistaken, Gilgal is where when Joshua came in and they actually circumcised the Jewish people. I'm not sure why it's called the Chet. Asisi Mam Tzidkas Harba. I did many good things. Did a lot of tzedakah, so to say, righteousness for the Jewish people by not getting angry. All the time, Bilam thought it would be a good time for me to curse you. When God would be angry, theoretically, and then the curses would be active. But because I did a tzedakah, I didn't get angry. So even though I should have maybe been angry, but so he says that this is what Bilam says to Balak. He says he can't be angry because God doesn't want to allow him to curse. God wasn't angry. It says God is angry every day. How long is he angry? It says rega, only for a second. It's only 1 second. We're going to learn soon that why does God? It says that God gets angry in the mornings. He doesn't like the way people wake up. People wake up in the morning. It says specifically the kings that they're bowing down, but it's an indication that people don't wake up well. When people don't wake up well, so God kind of gets angry for a second in the morning the way people wake up. So so we see that there's a concept of anger, but it's only a reg, it's only a second. And Bilam was trying to tap into that anger, and he wasn't successful. So he says like this. Okay, let's go further. So Rashi says, God was not angry, even though he should have been maybe angry after the sin of Shittim, of the sin of the daughters of Midian. He just brings a pasuk, the idea of anger. How long is God upset? For a second. And it says God only has his anger for 1 second. So the Gemara continues. and says about the anger of Hashem, we could say, Lech ami boy b'chadarecha usgar d'lasecha badecha. Come, my people, come into the bed, into the room, close the door, so to say, for a second to protect from the anger. Chavi k'mat rega ad yavrazam. Hide. Sometimes don't show yourself, right? Don't show yourself when there's anger. So God says to the Jewish people in Yeshaya, come into the room and hide for a second while the anger is there. Emisai rasach, when's God get angry? What's that? When's that time? It says betlas shrei kamayasa, in the first 3 hours of the morning. Ki chivara karbla de tarnagla, like when the chest of the rooster becomes red. Kol shaita v'shaita nami chivara. So it says chivara means white. So when it turns white is when it's when he's angry. So kol shaita v'shaita nami chivara. God, the rooster is always white. What do you mean when the rooster is white? Kol shaita v'shaita isbay surukai sumake. Evidently, there's these streaks of redness in the white of the chest of the rooster. Hahi shaita, at the time when God is angry, less by surakaya sumaka, there is no red. So some want to say there's no red because like a person who gets shocked, you turn pale. So to say the chicken turns pale, others say there's no connection between the rooster getting pale and the anger of God. It's just an indication of when that time is. And that time is in the early 3 hours of the morning, so to say the streaks of red leave the rooster, and that's the time God is angry. Why is he angry? Like the Gemara is going to tell us, is because the people don't wake up well. Rashi says, "Betlas shai kamaisa," the first 3 hours, shayim zaman, shayim zman kima. It's the time people wake up. Shekol shali shai zman kima la'amim mitasai. That's the time people wake up. The first 3 hours. Again, Jewish hours is not regular hours, right? We divide light hours by 12 all the time. So no matter if it's winter, summer, that's the hour could be 40 minutes, an hour could be 70 minutes. It depends how long the day is. But every day is made up of 12 hours divided by how long the sunlight is. So the first 3 hours of Shazman is when people wake up, because when he sees the kings, that morning they wake up and they bow to their idols. When they put their crowns on their heads. It's not just an indication, obviously, of when the kings wake up, but it's an indication of how people wake up in the morning, and they're bowing to another energy. They're bowing to the sun. The sun is you wake up and you check your emails. You wake up and right away run to do business as opposed to davening. So it's obviously not bowing down to the sun, but they say it's called over the vadazar b'tahara, right? So when you wake up, it's how you wake up. Do you wake up running to serve the idol of the time, or you're running to wake up in the morning and daven and go learn in yeshiva an hour, have a shiur? So it says kol shaitan amichiura. He always has a white chest, the rooster. You never see redness by the rooster. So it says suruke smuke. Afilu kishmechafes. Even when he's regularly white, he has streaks of red. But the time of the morning, it's all white. Okay, so the rooster has a white chest in the morning. That's the time God is angry in the morning. The first 3 hours when the people are not waking up properly, or the kings are bowing down to their idols. Okay, here we have an interesting Gemara. The Gemara says that like this. Reb Shua ben Levi says, "Ahu mina." There's a heretic, the Hava Bishu Vavuse de Rabbi Shua ben Levi. He lived in the neighborhood of Reb Shua ben Levi. They could have a kamatzarle, and he annoyed him, and he was bothering him. This heretic. So Yom Echad Tarnegoilta. So one day, Reb Shua ben Levi took a rooster, and he was looking at his chest. He said, Kimata Hushaita Izilatie. He was waiting for the rooster to have a full white chest. Like we said, that's when God is angry. And then Reb Shua ben Levi would curse this heretic. Kimata Hushaita, when the time came for the rooster to go white, Nimnem, he fell asleep. So Reb Shua ben Levi slept through he wanted to curse him, and then he fell asleep. Amrahim, when he woke up, he realized, he said, Shema Minah, from here he sees that it's inappropriate to curse anyone, even a heretic you shouldn't curse. So he says, Shema Minah, from this I understand, Lav Urach, Ara, it's not proper. Gam anish l'tzadik le'toiv, afilu b'minei le'iboy le'memer hachi. Says for tzaddik, for a righteous person, it's inappropriate to curse. Even for a heretic, one shouldn't curse. I mean, he realized from this that he fell asleep. God was telling him that even an enemy, even a person who annoys you, bothers you, doesn't say what he did to him, but he kind of he made his life difficult. Nevertheless, you don't stoop down to trying to curse him. It says gam oynish tzaddik le'toiv ein nochin l'tzadik she'yimanish. It doesn't make sense for a tzaddik to punish someone. No one should be punished. Because, what do we say every night? The Kriya Shalamita, I forgive everyone. I don't want God to punish anyone on my account. Okay. So what do we learn? We learn to name Rameir that when is God angry? When the sun shines, and the kings wake up and put their crowns on their heads. That's when God gets angry. I think other Mefarshim say that they wake up too early. A king shouldn't wake up early. And then we say, we learned before, a king wakes up later. Nevertheless, they wake up early because they want to serve idols. All right, now we're going back to the story of Bilam. I'm going to try to get through as much as we can till the end of the class. So Bilam wakes up in the morning. God says he could go with them, on condition, of course, he only does what God says. And he wakes up Boker early, and he saddles his donkey. So who else do we learn about that woke up early and saddles his donkey? Of course, Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was told by God to go sacrifice his son Yitzchak. He says, "V'yashkem Avram b'boker." Again, we find in Perek Chelek, there's the Talmud of Bilam, Talmud of Avram. Everything positive is Avram Shimshon. Everything negative is Bilam. Right? Be from the students of Avram, don't be from the students of Bilam. So Bilam also wakes up early. There's another Gemara that says, don't try to wake up early to curse the Jewish people. Rashi quotes it. Avram woke up early. He took care of the mornings. The mornings belong to Avram. It says, Tana Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Ava mivateles shura shel gedula mi Avram. What do we? Ava mivateles shura. When a person has love for something, a passion for something, it breaks the norm. It means it breaks the person's shura. Means the person should have kind of stature. If a person's an important person, you don't behave a certain way. It's beneath you. But if you have a love for something, you're ready to go against the norm of your stature to do something. For gedula, for something great, we learn from Avram. Like it says, "V'yashkem Avram b'boker." Though Avram was a great person and he should have had his servants set up his camel, his donkey, he does it himself because he loves to do God's will. Sina mevatel shura shagdul mi bilam. How do we see that hate? A person gets beneath themselves, even because they hate something so much. That we learn from Bilam. Bilam also wakes up early and saddles his donkey as opposed to waiting for someone else to do it or to sleep in a bit. So we see clearly that the others Mefarshim say that the Gedula is that the fact that there's two nekudas here, there's two emphasis here. One is the waking up early, and the other one is saddling your own donkey. So some learn the saddling your own donkey is a sign that that you're ready to go against your stature of a Gedula, of a great person, because you saddle your own donkeys. Others learn that it's the waking up in the morning. A person who wakes up early is a person usually who has an early, who's a working man. Avram Avinu is a gadol. Bilam is a gadol. It says the king wakes up late. All right, we learned that already. So the king wakes up late, but nevertheless, when it comes to something that you have a passion or you have a hate towards, you go against the norm. So because Avram loves God, is bitla shura shagdula shachavesh ba'atzmi. So Rashi learns that therefore he saddles himself, even though it's beneath Avram to saddle his own donkey, but his love for God is he saddles it himself. The sina and the hate that Bilam has for the Jewish people. Shesana Bilam harashes Yisrael, Bilam the evil, the wicked, hates the Jewish people. Bitla shura shagdula. He also goes against the norm of aristocrat. Shachavesh ba'atzmi. He goes and he saddles his own donkey. Again, others learn that the idea, the Yad Ramah learns that it's not the saddling, it's the waking up early. No, the Yad Ramah actually agrees with Rashi, so where did I see that? The Marsha says, sorry. So the Yad Ramah says that he saddles. The Marsha quotes that he woke up early. So he says the Mashah here, Rabbi Steinsaltz quotes that. Now Rashbar explains the proof is not from the fact that Avram saddled his own donkey, but from the fact that that he arose early in the morning. Typically, distinguished people sleep later. So the fact that he woke up early, Vayashkam Avram Baboker, is a sign that he was ready Mvatelis Ashura, Avram Mvatelis Ashura, because he loved God. He went against the norm. Rav Yehuda Marav. Rav Yehuda says the name of Rav. The oilam yasik adam b'toiro mitzvah afili shaloi lishma shemitoich shaloi lishma ba lishma. Here we there's a famous Gemara that a person should always preoccupy themselves in the study of Torah and the performance of mitzvahs, even if it's shaloi lishma, even if it's without the proper intent, because eventually shemitoich shaloi lishma, from when a person may start off shaloi lishma without a proper intent, ba lishma will come with the proper intent. Lishma means for the sake of God. Even if you're doing it for other reasons, you're accustomed to it, it's expected from you, or you want reward. Lishma has many levels, right? What's lishma? Lishma means for the sake of God. Are you doing it for respect? Are you doing it so people should respect you? Are you doing it so that God should give you gifts, right? Or are you serving God for the sake? So a person may say, well, I'm not able to commit myself to serve God for lishma, for the 100% right reasons. Maybe I shouldn't serve God at all. So Rabbi Yehuda Rav says no. Better preoccupy yourself shaloi lishma, because eventually you'll get to lishma. The Rebbe always teaches. The Rebbe explains this line the way Chassidus does. That shemitoich, that within the loy lishma you'll find the lishma. It's within that struggle of focusing you'll find the right focus. Why? Where do we see this from? Why are we quoting this idea now in this story of Bilam? Shebeschar arboyim ushtarim karbanis shehikriv Balak. Balak was the king of Moab. And if you remember the story of Balak and Bilam, what does Balak do? He goes and he does all these sacrifices. How many sacrifices did he do in total? 42 sacrifices. So in corresponding to the 42 sacrifices that Balak was a wicked person. That's definitely shaloi lishmoi. No intent for the right reasons. He did it totally for the wrong reasons, to curse the Jewish people. Nevertheless, he made a sacrifice to God. Zacha v'yatzim men Ruth. Ruth is a descendant of Moab, of Balak. Rabbi Yossi Bar Huna, because Rabbi Yossi Bar Huna says, Ruth bitoy shel Eglon. Ruth is the daughter of Eglon. Ben Benoi shel Balak, and he's the grandson of Balak, Melech Moav. So who's Moav? Again, a lot of these people come back. We learned last week or last class, we learned that Bilam is Lavan's son, Ba'ar, Lavan. All these people are family, or become family. So who's Balak? Balak is the horrible king of Moab. Who's his descendant? Ruth. Ruth is the granddaughter of Eglon, and is the daughter of Eglon, who's the grandson of Balak. And what merit does Balak have that his granddaughter should be Ruth? And who's Ruth? Of course, the mother of David, Shlomo, of Mashiach. Mashiach comes from Ruth. What schus did he have? Because at the end of the day, he did 42 sacrifices, even though it was Shaloi Lishma, was not with the right intent. Men-based karbanis, what are the 42 sacrifices? Again, those who know a little bit of the Kabbalistic ideas, the number men-based is the corresponding to the men-based is the number of the Onabachoach. It's one of Hashem's names. It's the Midos without Malchus. So it's the 42 travels in the desert. The number 42 is a significant number. So it says mem-based karbanos. What is the 42 karbanos? 42 words of the Shema Yisrael. Is bein parim le'elim zayin parim v'zayin elim gimel pamim. He did between the cows and the rams. He did 7 cows, 7 rams. 3 times 14, right? So 3 times 14 is 28. Is 38 is 42. Harimembe is ben param ve'elim. So between the rams and the cows, he had 42 sacrifices. So he did 3 times 7, 3 times 14. He did 7 cows, 7 rams. Times 3 was 42. Ben Benoi, he's the son of Eglon, is the son of Balak. The commentators explain that the reference the son of the son or daughter of the son need not to be understood literally. Even more distant descendants could be characterized in that manner. I'm not sure what the issue is. Why he couldn't be the grandson of Eglon. It can't be the grandson of Balak and Ruth. I mean, Ruth is in the story of Judges, is Boaz. It's not like it's hundreds of years later, but either way, Reb Steinsaltz quotes the Tosfos in Nazir that it doesn't mean exactly that Ruth was the great-granddaughter of Balak, but a descendant of Bilam. Okay, let's go a little further. Omer le Rava le Rabba Bar Mori. Rava said to Rabba Bar Mori. It says, Yite velikim Hashem shlomo mishmecha v'yigadol es kisa mikisecha. In Kings, it says that when he praised David, King David, what did he say to David? This is already obviously when Shlomo is going to be king. So they praise him, Yite velikim Hashem shlomo. God should make Yite from the word Tov. God should make the name of Shlomo greater than your name, and his chair, his throne, greater than your throne. So the Gemara says, who talks like that to a king? Why would you praise David that Shlomo should be greater than him? That's not, I mean, even we're going to see that's not so simple that's not so. But the Gemara initially says, why would you talk to David like that? So therefore you have to say, Me'ein ka'amrele. It doesn't mean that Shlomo should be greater than David, but you're asking that Shlomo should be as great as David. So it says, Oyrech ara l'meimer hachi. Do we talk like that? V'chiderach eretz, is it proper? Cain, Shiyomru v'yitev l'kim shem Shlomo mishmecha, that Shlomo should have a greater name than David. V'chushu daita da amr lei shiye gadol mi'aviv. It makes David feel bad if you're blessing Shlomo to be greater than him. Me'ein shemecha kamlei, me'ein kisecha v'lei gadol mamish. The Gemara is going to challenge it and say there's two people a person's not jealous of. One is of your children. But we see the Havamin in the Gemara, the initial thinking of the Gemara is that even from your children, you don't want someone to say, look, you're the father of so-and-so, your son is greater than you, or did better than you. That's why maybe the Gemaras that we learned in the past, Achitofel and Batya and the other people who made a mistake, the Eshes Potiphar, who saw greatness, Achitofel, they saw greatness in other people. Korach, they saw greatness, they thought the greatness was theirs, even though it was their children. Why couldn't he see it in their children? Why did they see it in themselves? Achitofel saw greatness. He didn't understand that he's the grandfather of Shlomo. He was the father of Bathsheba. Korach saw greatness. He saw Shmuel. He thought, of course, that means he has to be great. You know, the daughter of Potiphar wanted to be with Yosef because she saw greatness. It was her daughter or her adopted daughter that ended up marrying Yosef. But why couldn't they see it for themselves that it was their children? Because we see from the Havamim and the Gemara, a person doesn't want to see that their children are going to be greater than them. That's at least what the Gemara initially thinks. It says, the Rashash notes that the Gemara should read, okay, this is a technical idea. This is based on the Gemara going a little further ahead, the Yad Ramah. If you don't want to say this, that it means Ke'ain, Me'ain, that the Shlomo should only be as great as David, not greater than David. We have another verse going back to Yael. Yael again kills Sisra. So it says about Yael, Tivarach minashim Yael Eshes Chever Akeni, that Yael, the wife of Chever Akeni, is Tivarach minashim. She's blessed more than the woman. Who's the woman? Minashim ba'ayel Tivarach. Which woman is she greater than? Nashim ba'ayel. Ma'aninu, who are the women of the tent? Sarah, Rivka, Rachel. We know that Sarah had a tent, right? Sarah is in the oil. Rivka is taken to the oil of Sarah Imo. Rachel and Leah had their own tent. So we see that the mothers were women of the tent. And it says Yael is greater than the mothers. Actually, she's greater than the mothers. Does it make sense that Yael should be greater than Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah? Again, we could question the question of the Gemara in certain ways, but let's go further. Elme'ein means to say that Yael was as great as the mothers. Hachinami mein kamra. So therefore, if just like Yael wasn't greater than Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, so too the blessing wasn't that David should be greater than Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Rashi says, Nashim ba'oil, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, V'Leah, Sarah, V'Rivka, D'chsiva, V'Yael, Yitzchak, Ha'ila, Sarimai. So the fact that it says that Yitzchak brought Rivka to Sarah, his mother Sarah's tent, so both Rivka and Sarah are connected to the tent. Rachel, Leah, how do we know that they're connected to the tent? It says, V'Yaitzu mi'oil Leah, V'Yav ba'oil Rachel. Lavan, Bilam, these old people coming back together, that he leaves the tent of Leah and goes to the tent of Rachel. So again, we see the mothers were women of the tent. So it says, Oyrach Arash Amr Devara Lial. Does it make sense that Devara would praise Yael? Shtei Brucha Misar Ravka Verivka. El Me'em Bracha Sarah Kamra. Means it doesn't make sense that Devara, who gives the blessing to Yael, would say that she should be Mivorach, should be greater than Nashim, than Sarah and Rachel. Therefore, we have to say that she means to say that she should be as great as Sarah, Rivka, Rachel. Upliga, in this whole Gemara, where people don't want their children to be better than them, argues with the Gemara of Rabbi Yossi Bar Chayni. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chayni says, the Rabbi Yossi Bar Chayni, B'kol Adam Miskana. Everyone is jealous of other people. Aside, chutz mi b'nai v'talmidai. A person is not jealous of their son, and a person is not jealous of their student. How do we know that a person is not jealous of their son? B'nai mishleimi, because Yosef Bar Chayni actually learns the verse literally, that they blessed David that Shlomo should be greater than him. And he wasn't offended. It was a pride that he took that Shlomo should be greater than him. So the Gemara has an argument. The initial opinion is that you don't want your children to be greater than you. But Yosef ben Chani says no. From David, the pasuk means literally that David's going to be great, that Shlomo will be greater than David. And how do we know Talmidai? It's Taki, think about it. What does Elisha ask Eliyahu Navi? He says, I want to have double the amount of ruach that you have. Why should he have double the amount of ruach than Eliyahu Navi has? Why would Eliyahu want to bless him with double the amount? Why should he be greater than Eliyahu Navi? So from there we see that he's not jealous of his student. And the other famous proof is from when Moshe Rabbeinu appoints Joshua as the leader. It says, "Vayismach es yadav alav vayitzaveyu," that Hashem said, "Yadai, put your hand on Yehoshua," and Moshe put both his hands on Yeshua. Means even though God only told him to put one hand on Yeshua, Moshe Rabbeinu puts both hands to show that he has no resentment to Yeshua and he wants Yeshua to be greater. So he says, let's just finish off with the Rashi. It says, "Upligi." It's an argument. This is how we say that Shlomo shouldn't be greater than David, but as great, argues Rabbi Yossi Bechani. How do we know that a person is not jealous of his son? From Shlomo, we clearly bless David that Shlomo should be greater than him, and they take it literally. And how do we know that a person is not jealous of their students? When Elisha asked to have double the ruach of the spirit, is he gave it to him and he wasn't jealous. Or by Moshe Rabbeinu put one hand on. Nevertheless, Moshe Rabbeinu is v'samachta is chada ozel iu v'samachta tarti, put two hands on. So we here see clearly that that people are not jealous of their children or their students. Again, we could all try to figure out on our own how we feel about our children and our students, but from Rabbi Yossi Bar Chani, clearly a person takes pride, and hopefully that's how we should all do that. We should take pride in our children, take pride in our students. It should be a compliment. If our children or our students outdo us, outperform us, are better than us, that's a compliment to us as well, not just something that Chas v'Shalom not only shouldn't be resentful, but we should take it as a compliment. All right, everyone, I'd like to thank you for joining, and see you in next week's class. Laila Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care. Thank you. Welcome.